So there's a love triangle in this game, and they're fighting over this guy? This guy? Chapter 2 of the Vytroverse, Pokemon SORS, is a uniquely built and designed Pokemon Gameboy Advance ROM hack that attempts some new ideas that feel right at home in the franchise. It has updated battle mechanics as far as up to Generation 8, a nearly complete national Pokedex up to Generation 7, and some more than recognizable music too. Does SORS come across as a touch edgy? Sure, at times, but I actually think that adds to SORS really being ambitious with its identity. But do big ambitions always pay off? Let's take a closer look. SORS first came out with version 1.0 in 2021, and has since had bug fixes and general maintenance patches throughout that year to get to the version I played, the most recent version 1.3. User Vytro really ascended a big leap when looking at how well made SORS is compared to Saiph, and Saiph is still a great ROM hack in its own right. The choice to go with Generation 4 sprites too was a good call, and things look a lot better here than before. The game is very story focused and story driven, and that's both to its credit and a bit, in my opinion, to its detriment as well. It has a pretty shocking ending for a Pokemon game, but it's also pretty tropey at the same time. Make no mistake, SORS is a brilliant fan production that deserves attention, but I do have my criticisms. You play as Asher, a vocal protagonist who is the son of two outlaws who run what is basically an advanced criminal syndicate. Asher's father chooses to break off from the group, named Ciara, to protect a young Asher, whereas Asher's mother stays in charge to fulfill the organization's goals. She's our main antagonist, and an evil one at that. Asher, now mostly being raised without his mother, knows the evils of Ciara's ways, and finds himself at odds with the group as they make a grand return, just as he gets his first Pokemon, one who we met in childhood, and works to take on a larger scale Pokemon Championship tournament no less. Asher will meet new and franchise favorite characters, and form tight bonds with them too. The crux of the plot centers around the new gameplay mechanic for the game, Eclipsing, which, I won't lie, I did not actually do much of in my entire playthrough. I didn't need to. I just played like any normal Pokemon game and didn't even end up using the Eclipsed Pokemon that they already gave me. Actually, at one point they give you an Eclipsed Pidgey, and I'm sure there was more to it, but I just didn't bother. I'm sure maybe I was supposed to eclipse the special starter Lucario I used, but I never did, which is pretty impressive because that might seem important, but it wasn't. I still played through and barely had any bumps or snags along the way. And I think that's really to SORS' credit. It functions as a fine enough Pokemon game even if you don't want to use Eclipsed Pokemon. The gameplay gimmick is basically optional. Despite that, this eclipsing power is also central to the story, and is basically part of Ciara's means of success in their malevolent mission. Asher explores the region of Hoopest, which is a region with a robust public transportation system that connects much of the towns and cities together. It's all centralized around Armor City, where Asher often has to return to in order to participate in the various rounds of the tournament. You see, there's no gym challenges in SORS, there's just tournament brackets for you to ascend. Every round you have 3 trainers to take out in a row, with only item healing being available in between battles. Each final round tends to have a character who's been previously featured in the Pokemon franchise. This makes for a decent cameo fest of characters, though many show up and leave so quickly that it hardly matters who they are. Still cool though. The rounds get progressively harder as the game goes on, and Armor City expands its access to the player the more rounds are completed and the more story sequences are finished. Armor City, while really cool looking, is honestly way too big, and definitely doesn't have enough things densely packed in to make it truly worth exploring. Though I'll admit having a big sprawling city to return to does feel good, and seeing more and more of it become explorable feels rewarding. Brilliantly as well, SORS does away with HMs, and the game is so much better for it. Really helps it feel more like a modern Pokemon title. The way paths are blocked for the sake of the story is just way better than having hidden machines. No need for one Pokemon just for HMs, and more room in your party for Pokemon that you actually want for a playthrough. There are important minor characters, beyond Asher, his dad, the local professor, and so on. Of course, there's Velora, the love interest in the story. Which, look, Velora is a fine character, and she's a great companion for Asher. Though, I just didn't really end up seeing her develop much more than just being a romantic interest for the protagonist. One of the big plot moments in the story is where, since apparently Asher is so cool and handsome with his red hair streak, Dawn from Pokemon Diamond and Pearl, yes, that same Dawn, makes many flirtatious passes at him, which makes Velora in turn pretty anxious. They even make it so that if Dawn wins a Pokemon battle with Asher, she gets to take him on a date. This kind of male fantasy writing, while I'm not necessarily saying it's bad or doesn't have its place, just turns me right off. To me, none of this relationship building feels terribly natural or engaging. Two girls suddenly are very vocal and in your face about how badly they're interested in being with you because you're just so cool. It's just a bit much for my taste. I know that it's kind of a trope from anime and this game is really inspired by anime, but it's just not for me. Asher and Velora do have some sweet, albeit corny moments together, but beyond that, their relationship is one mostly built on jealousy due to Dawn. I'm not saying don't try to do romance in your game's narrative, but I just wasn't really believing it. Though a love triangle trope isn't typically done in Pokemon ROM hacks, so I do have to give credit for ambition, that's for sure. Even though their romance arc does end up doing a few other corny tropes later on, it still overall added another layer to the story that I appreciated. There's actually other romances hinted at in the histories of other characters you learn about, which is an interesting detail for sure. Aside from Velora, the other pretty prominent character is Frio, the main rival for the game. And in a great writing choice, Frio is not only initially mysterious, but also a pretty mean and discouraging character to butt heads with. I much prefer a rival I'm happy to shut up, rather than a character who's just gonna get lost in a sea of their own self-doubt because they consistently lose to the main character in Pokemon battles. I know it's arguably a bit more of a realistic take on childhood-friendly rivals, a la rivals like How, who learn to try their best anyway and support their friends in victories rather than comparing oneself unfairly, but I like a rival that exudes ego and then subsequently gets humbled. And Frio is a seriously confident and rude guy, making beating him all the sweeter. Things get even better through discovering his backstory and watching his motivations evolve throughout his character arc. He's a major highlight for me to say the least. I also just really like his design. Even though you could make the argument it's a blonde, purple-clothed version of Red, I still really like it. The last character that becomes important is Micah, the protagonist from Pokemon Saiph, who shows up and is, I don't know, made way too cool. Kind of feels like a cheesy writer self-insert character at times. But ultimately it's fine, and you even get some decent post-game content with him as well. Alongside some other betrayals and anime-esque character reveal surprises, there's not much more to the quest to stop Ciara and to understand the mysteries of eclipsing. The writing does come off a bit like a high school edgelord fanfiction at times, but in fairness, Pokemon trainers are supposed to be kids, so it kinda makes sense. I mean, 10 to 14 years old, this is kinda how they are. The game has many features that make it a pretty impressive fan project, even going beyond the original region and story. All the modern stuff, including some features that go all the way up to Gen 8, are present. There's the physical special split, EXP share, reusable TMs, repel reuse prompts, and I'm gonna say it again, no HMs. You get soaring, which is like a more fun but less fast version of fly fast traveling. Also, it's a pun for the name. Because it's called SORS. Side quests, which for the most part are great, but are a bit limited in not being able to accept new ones without abandoning the most recent uncompleted quest. Not the end of the world, just remember to do each quest as you get them, if you want to do side quests at all throughout a playthrough. You can always get easily reminded as to where to go next in the game, and even though you might get tired of maneuvering some of the same spots over and over again, none of the environments or music is overused enough to wear out its welcome. Aesthetically, what more can I say? SORS is a gorgeous GBA ROM hack with beautiful custom sprite work and graphics everywhere. Look at that beautiful UI design, I just love it. SORS even has transparent text boxes, which I have not seen before. It has custom animations and even a surprise Fakemon legendary. The music is a lot of fun, with some versions of known tracks being made possible for Game Boy Advance. There's a lot to love with Pokemon SORS. It's another quality game from the Vytroverse, and it improves a lot from Saiph and then some. Sure, as I said, I have my criticisms, but honestly, I still really recommend SORS regardless of all of that. I had a pretty great time, and now I'm even more interested in playing its sequel, Pokemon Saiph 2. You would sorely regret missing playing this one if it looks like it interests you.